Hello there, and welcome to Gooner U, where there are no degrees because the learning never stops. I'm Dove, a TA here at Gooner U, and my friend Keith is our stalwart distinguished professor of Arsenal and football studies. Enter our classroom as we discuss the week's news involving Arsenal, Premier League, Champions League, international football, and sometimes MLS, because we're Americans. This week, Arsenal returned from the March international break to play Southampton at St. Mary's Stadium in the quarterfinal round of the FA Cup. I just thought of the FA Cup again. How you doing, Keith?
Hi, Dove. I was going to talk about how much I enjoyed my international break. I was not called up to my national team, so I got to spend a few days. I went to Chicago, which only feels like a foreign country when you're in Texas. It was substantially colder, but had a nice time. And now I'm back and refreshed for the run-in. And we got to get ready for a trip to Wembley. Oh.
So how did you manage not to get called up? Did you feign injury?
Look, okay, first off, the doctors have checked me and listen, I think anybody watching knows he's not fine. Look, we have just obviously the international broadcasting pool is much deeper, especially in the US. So, my services weren't needed, but it's okay. My country knows that I will answer the call when the time comes. So, but yeah, obviously it's important that we're set for the run-in. So.
Yeah. Well, for me, the international break was occupied by a return to baseball. Baseball in the U.S. came back. My Cubs podcast that has now morphed from a daily podcast to like a once or twice a week podcast is back. And we're talking about the contracts that got renewed and the ones that we may want to renew. And they're talking about with guys who have like a year left on their contract. They're talking about wanting to renew them before it goes to arbitration, which sounds like a really scary term to be throwing around when it comes to something as simple as a sports contract. What are they talking about with that?
Right. So arbitration. So this is definitely a closed market, only in American sports thing. It's not something you're going to see in the global soccer player market. But typically it's younger players who are coming off of their earlier deals. Their first contracts are two-way deals. As they expire, they have the opportunity to go to arbitration. And the NHL does this too. But the idea is that the player says, I should be paid this amount. The club says you should be paid this amount. And obviously there's a difference between the two of them. And typically the threat of arbitration is enough to make the team and the player, because typically they aren't very far apart, it's typically enough to make them say, let's just work out a deal and avoid going to arbitration. Because arbitration itself sucks. It's terrible. Because what you do now in baseball, the rule is the player submits his number, the team submits their number, and the arbitrator listens to their cases and then chooses one of the two numbers. He can't divide it down the middle.
So interesting.
He has to pick one of those numbers. And so if you're the team, if you're the player, right, you walk in and go, here are my numbers. Here's why I should be paid this. Here's your agent's going to talk about, I'm comparable to this player who makes this amount of money the team usually is, well, here's why we think you're comparable to this player. Here's why we think you suck. Here's all the things we don't like about you. And they can get really it's not contentious because you're just laying out your case and comparables and the numbers you're looking at. And sometimes it's internal stuff too. We've talked to you many times about your attitude, the things like that. And it's kind of an awkward thing to do. I mean, there's stories of crying during arbitration because you're basically hearing the team who has put a lot into you, clearly is invested in your improvement, basically just telling you all the things they hate about you as a player and why you deserve to make a smaller amount of money than you think you do. So generally speaking, you want to avoid arbitration. There was a big case this offseason. It involved Tarek Skubal, who's the pitcher for the Detroit Tigers, who also won the last two American League Cy Young Awards, the pitcher of the year, position for his, player of the year for his position award. The Tigers absurdly lowballed his offer, and the arbitrator picked his number. Let's just leave it at that, which leads to the suggestion arbitration contracts are typically only for 1 year. So a lot of times if you're in arbitration, that's usually a sign of, he's probably leaving after the end of this season. Like, it's not
right.
Working out a deal before arbitration leads to an extension. If you don't do that, you're probably not going to. In the case of Skubal and the Tigers, that doesn't look good. There was a huge gulf between their numbers. Like, kind of to a lot of point, people were looking at the Tigers and going, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And there's all sorts of weird things about draft pick compensation and all sorts of weird, like, it isn't just about the money. There's other ways where it's about other kinds of money. So there's a lot of layers to that story. But yeah, the short answer is arbitration is not something you generally want to go through. You'll hear a lot of times about players making deals or teams making deals to avoid arbitration. And it's the rare cases that go there generally aren't. It's not something you want to. It's something you want to avoid if you can.
Well, meanwhile, in the soccer world over this international break, FIFA released their last, what are they calling it? Last chance or final chance or last minute ticket sales, something like that. Oh boy, and I've used this comparison before, but I tried, and it is like the world's crappiest video game. It's just like, so they opened the queue at 11 a.m. This was on a day that I think I was homesick last week. I don't remember anymore. It's all in a haze. But I happened to see an article at like 11:05 or something announcing that these tickets were going to be available. So I joined from my phone the queue, this virtual queue that they have, right? And it represents the queue as a circle. And your point on the circle is like one little dot at the top. By 5 hours later, I had moved like maybe 10 or 15 degrees along this circle, right? And they're telling you when your spot comes up, you have 5 minutes to act or it's gone.
Yeah.
So they've got millions and millions of people entering the system. Most of them probably missing their chance because you can't watch it closely enough. It's like, it's not possible for that sustained a period. Like, I defy anybody. I was trying as best as my addled brain could manage at the time. It was really bad. So then it became a matter of, okay, the next day, try again. The next day, try again. Eventually, I managed to have it up at a time when I actually saw a countdown, like, oh, you have 19 minutes and 59 seconds remaining, and actually gave me a real countdown where, oh, okay, cool. I've been able to plan around that. I can set a timer, make sure I'm there, make sure I'm ready. And then the real fun began. I got to see which matches had seats available and which seats they had available and how much they wanted for these. So, first of all, there were no New York, New Jersey tickets left at that point. Nothing. So, okay, that made it easy. I'm going to focus on Dallas. I'm going to be there for a few weeks in July. I overlapped with a round of 32 and a round of 16 match that were going to be going on there that had tickets available. I can't even remember anymore which teams were involved, but, well, never mind. It's round of 30, round of 32 and round of 16. You don't know yet. You know the labels of the teams, but you don't know which actual teams yet because Raya was beyond the group stage. So the section that was available for each of those was like in like the upper deck in like the corner.
Yeah.
Both of them. The round of 32 tickets were like $400 a seat. The round of 16 were like $500 a seat. Something like that.
It's not bad.
Yeah, that's what talking to you about this before we recorded, I'm realizing maybe it wasn't quite so bad. But
that's pretty good, actually.
For those seats, not even knowing which teams, I was like, So who knows? I may try again. I don't know.
I will say this: if the U.S. finishes second in their group, that's where they'd be playing their round of 32 game.
Okay.
So I don't know if that totally accounts for that. But
yeah,
it does kind of open up that possibility.
Yeah.
So. it's interesting. So I do have tickets. I don't know if we talked about this. I have tickets, and actually, this window we found out the other team in the game. I will be seeing Netherlands Sweden, which is kind of exciting in Houston. So a little Jurrien Timber versus Victor Gyökeres. So for an Arsenal connection there. That'll be fun.
Yeah, for our viewers and listeners, look out. Our bio on Jurrien Timber will be coming out this week. I edited it yesterday. It's ready to go. I'll be shipping that out in the next couple of days. So look for that.
Yeah, my sister was apparently in the same one you were. She gave me a call, I think on Wednesday, had a possibility of getting $150 tickets to see Cape Verde versus Saudi Arabia in Houston. And now... My brother and I talked about this. He does not live in Houston, but he will be coming. He's plans to be down here. He bought the tickets for the Netherlands game. He'll plan to be down here for that. If he didn't already have tickets, that's a game he would go to. And I know quite a few people who are trying to. I know a couple people who are trying to unload tickets to that game because they don't want to go. The problem is they bought them way back in the first lottery, when you didn't know who was playing.
Right.
And so now they've realized they've dropped $600 to go see Cape Verde and Saudi Arabia, who, all due respect to Cape Verde World Cup debutants and to Saudi Arabia, it's not the sexiest matchup. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I'm kind of in a mixed on this because obviously with the prices and everything, and I'm sure a good chunk of these tickets are being bought by people who are reselling them through the usual marketplaces. So there's a part of me that's kind of wondering about, like, with the prices and all that, how many people are actually going to these games. And the Club World Cup kind of becomes the example of this, right? I mean, they, those were, I understand, I'll go to that, expensive tickets. Some of them involving matches involving teams that, let's be honest, most Americans or most people nearby had never heard of those teams, much less be interested in them. They weren't the big European clubs. They weren't the big South American clubs who would draw in an audience. So, yeah, on the other hand, like you said, it's not like they're floating out there right now through FIFA. Somebody's buying these tickets. I don't know. It's an interesting one.
So yeah, I've resigned myself to trying on a secondary market a little bit later. I don't know. We'll see. It's obviously, it ultimately depends on who those teams are. Like if the US does become one of those round of 32 participants, prices will go up. If it's someone else who no one cares about, maybe it goes down. I don't know.
I will say, since one of the problems for you too is, of course, living in New York, aside from just the sheer number of people, New York got some pretty excellent games, like Brazil, Morocco, France, Senegal, Norway, Senegal, Ecuador, Germany, Panama, England. Like, those are big teams there. Those tickets are going to go, and then of course the Meadowlands has the final.
Right.
Not that you were. I mean, listen, the final is the kind of one you really shell out for. Of course, it also reaches that point where, like, can I spend that much money, like, at once? Yeah. Can I do that? So, it's interesting.
I'm holding out hope. My job mentioned potentially trying to get tickets for us to go. So that's, if that happens, I care less about trying to see a match in Dallas. So I don't know. We'll see. I'd still like for my son to be able to go, and if it's a work thing, that's not going to be available to him. So who knows? We'll see. But
my brother also supposedly has an in potentially for the round of 32 game in Santa Clara, so the Bay Area. The problem for San Francisco, for the Bay Area, is that most of their group games are decidedly unsexy. I think Switzerland is the biggest name I see there. With, again, much love to Granit Xhaka, but nah. But they do have a round of 32 game, which would be the winner of Group D, which my brother, of course, fingers crossed that it's the United States. So, we'll see.
Cool. Well, while we're on the topic of all the international stuff going on, Ben White apparently made his return to the English national team.
Yeah, kind of like we all kind of thought he would. I mean, I guess the stranger thing isn't so much White. It's not so much White getting called up for England. Not that England wouldn't want him, but it's also more from just the. I mean, he really hasn't played very much for Arsenal this year, and so. But I mean, he's got a pretty good, a track record with, in the Premier League with Arsenal, and where was he? Was he Southampton? Was he Southampton? I think before coming to Arsenal, I forget where we got him from. See,
Brighton, I think, wasn't it? Or
Brighton, maybe.
Was that
another one of the Brighton ones? I mean, either way, he has a track record in England,
right?
And obviously, there was the weird falling out that happened in the last World Cup. He left partway through the camp, partly through the tournament. Nobody's really saying why. I suspect it's kind of one of those things that if you really break it down, everybody kind of looks like an idiot in it. It's, I can defend Ben White to a point, but at the same time, like, you did leave in the middle. Like, that's not a thing that typically happens. But clearly it was connected to the management, the coaching staff there, particularly the rumors are one particular assistant. We don't need to dive into that. But obviously all of those guys are gone. Gareth Southgate is no longer the England manager. It's Thomas Tuchel. And I thought a lot of Tuchel's comments on, Ben White and sort of the reaction he was getting from people, I thought were good. I appreciated them. I mean, not that I find a lot of the noise that surrounds the England national team to be kind of funny because it clearly wrecks what is otherwise actually a pretty decent national side. But, the English tripping over themselves is very funny. Apparently. Yeah.
Some real-time follow-up, though. I remembered a football thing. Brighton was the team that basically he went to Southampton's academy, but then started with Brighton with the U18s and stayed with Brighton until he came to Arsenal 7 years later. He had some loan spells at Newport, Peterborough, Leeds. Leeds was his most recent spell before he went to us. So, Brighton.
Yeah, look at that, Dove. Remember the football thing. I like how you... Anyway, by all accounts, he had apparently a very eventful game, scored a goal and conceded a penalty in England's break in their first match, which I believe they drew. I don't know what to make of that, but I mean, there were two sets of games in this international break. One were the World Cup playoffs. UEFA had 4 sets of playoffs. FIFA was hosting the Intercontinental playoffs, or 2. Basically, the last 6 spots of the World Cup were up for grabs. 6, there we go, get numbers right. The last 6 spots were up for grabs. That's a big deal. Everybody else is playing friendlies. And you just can't take too many lessons on that if we're thinking about this from the perspective of the national teams. Obviously, as I said, I came to the sport first and foremost through the U.S. men's national team. They did not have a particularly good break. They lost to Belgium and Portugal. Talent level isn't as good. We're going to crash out of the group, blah, blah, blah. A lot of the usual sort of stuff that, that comes after these games. And while there is a small portion of the U.S. fan base that probably should just take a bath with a toaster and get it over with. I don't know what I'm supposed to be able to draw from these games too much, other than, okay, Belgium and Portugal are better than us, which, this isn't... Would I have liked a better performance from what I understand? Yeah, I guess that would have been nice. Not losing 5-2 or 2-0 would be preferred. But, I mean... It's so hard to say. Guys are rotating in and out. I get the sense that Pochettino's still looking at some bottom of the roster guys. England kind of was a damn squib in their 2 friendlies. Who cares? France looked really good. Okay, France also is probably going to be really good. Like I don't think we're really learning anything important in these games, which kind of leads us to the other part, which is that there were. Speaking of things there were a lot of noise about in this break, 10 Arsenal players left their national teams early during the course of this international break. Most of them with some conversations surrounding injuries.
As alluded to at the very beginning of the show.
Yeah. And I guess, again, for so many of these, I mean, there were two Arsenal players. Double check the list. As far as I can tell, there were two Arsenal players who were involved in those World Cup playoffs. Christian Norgard played for Denmark, and Victor Gyökeres was playing for Sweden. Other than that, like, I think this was a good break for Ben White, who hasn't gotten a lot of playing time for Arsenal, to get a chance to play a little bit and also maybe work his way back into the England conversation heading into the World Cup. Thomas Tuchel doesn't have any questions about Bukayo Saka. He doesn't have any questions about Declan Rice. He knows who they are. He knows what they're capable of. He knows where they fit in his vision of England. Like, so the fact that both of them left camp early to come back to Arsenal to continue their rehab, who cares? Like, how is this a story? Gabriel, I think they said, left Brazil early. Martinelli stayed through. Zubimendi left Spain early. I think Saliba was with France. He left early. So I just feel like all of this is a lot of it's just a lot of noise and some of the usual sort of noise that comes around. This time of year, it comes around with the national teams. We know a little bit where these guys stand injury-wise. Obviously, I think the bigger ones that came out of it, the biggest one that seemed to come out of this was Noni Madueke, who had to come off of England's first game, was seen wearing a brace afterwards, which is not great. And there were, frankly, even some stories floating around, when are we going to see Madueke again? It apparently got a little bit better. Because obviously there was a real concern that, this could be a while. And apparently afterwards they came out and the rumors were like, he'll probably out through the Sporting game, through the first leg of the Champions League. And then we see him on the bench and he comes off and plays the second half. So, for a player like Martin Odegaard, to get some time with Norway because he hasn't got a lot of playing time, that's a big one. Oh my goodness. I forgot the other Arsenal player in the break. Oh, it was Calafiori. Oh, Italy.
What happened?
Oh God. They lost. Three World Cups in a row they've missed. That's insane.
Oh, that is a big deal. So they were eliminated. They were in eliminated. The playoffs.
They lost the shootout to Bosnia and Herzegovina. They're out, which is just it's stunning. I can't. Let me rephrase that. It feels unfathomable just to think Italy, who has won the darn tournament 4 times, tied with Germany they're second most, tied they're behind Brazil and Germany. They've won it times, more than anyone else. It's more than almost anyone else, and they haven't played a knockout round game in the World Cup since they won the final 20 years ago.
Wow,
it's insane. But then again, you look through their lineup, they're just not very good. And part of this is because Serie A is not very good. I mean, the best teams in Serie A. I mean, Inter Milan is no joke. They've been to the Champions League final, I think, like 2 of the last 5 years. But that's also with an older team, and some of their best players aren't Italian. AC Milan is okay. Juventus has been okay. Like, there just aren't a lot of great Italian players right now, and it's kind of. I mean, Calafiori might be the best one, and we love Calafiori. But if he's your best player, and he's probably not, there's a couple others, but it's not good. They're not in a good place right now.
Oh man,
yeah, that's a weird one. So anyway, I guess, do we want to say who actually is in the World Cup?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, sure. So, European finalists, we mentioned Christian Norgard in Denmark. They lost to Czech Republic, or Czechia. Everything I've seen from FIFA is still saying Czech Republic, so I'm going to go with that. But Czech Republic are in. Congrats to them. Sorry to Denmark. Oh man, Denmark qualifying. What, they dropped points in 2 games, and they got knocked into the playoff, and then now suddenly are out. Like we were talking about them as basically being all but qualified, and they're now out. Then there's, we mentioned Sweden. Victor Gyökeres scores, I think, in like the 86th minute against Poland to send them through. By the way, this was Sweden. By the way, I got to check this. I don't think they were terrible in qualifying. Like so Sweden. Hold on, let's see if I can pull this up. I remember reading this, and there's some talent on the team. By the way, they're managed by Graham Potter, formerly of Chelsea. Let's see if I can find this. Yeah, Sweden was in there.
There's a lot of formerly of Chelsea managers these days.
That's a lot. Well, that's not a new thing. Yeah, Sweden went 0 wins, 2 draws, and 4 losses in their qualifying group.
Ooh.
But because they had finished atop of their group in the Nations League like 2 years ago, they got to go into the qualification playoffs in which they beat Ukraine. And in Spain, because of course Ukraine can't play home games, for reasons. And then at home, beat Poland, and they're going to the World Cup. They will play Tunisia and the Netherlands and Japan in the World Cup. I will see them against the Netherlands in about 2.5 months.
Yeah, wow, crazy.
This is a weird World Cup qualifying's weird. Yeah, we mentioned Sweden. By the way, other ones we mentioned Bosnia and Herzegovina. The last one is Turkey. Turkey is an interesting one, having beaten Kosovo. Turkey is an interesting one because they are now in the US's group, so they will play the Americans in. I believe that's in their 3rd group game, which I believe is in Los Angeles or Inglewood, California, officially in the Los Angeles World Cup Stadium. And then quickly, the last 2 spots, the Intercontinental Playoffs went to the Democratic Republic of the Congo and then Iraq. So all 48 teams are here.
Yeah, so 48 seems like a weird number for a single elimination style tournament with a group stage. So that's where the round of 32 comes in, I guess. Like some countries get buys straight to the round of 16, but then like the rest... Or no, it's everyone's in the round of 32?
Well, no. So there's 48 teams. So the top 2 teams in each group will advance. There are 12 groups.
Right.
And then it is the next, I think it's must be the 8 best. Yeah, it's 12 groups, 24 to get to 32. 8 best 3rd place teams will also advance. And so there will be a round of 32 and then 16 quarters, semis, final.
Okay.
So basically, it's one more game than it has been in the when they were doing 32, even back when they were doing 24. Actually, this is very similar to when they were doing 24, where also some third place teams were able to advance. That's how the U.S. got into the round of 16 back in '94. Actually, finished 3rd in their group.
Cool. Well, meanwhile, back in England, I saw an article claiming confirmation that Pep Guardiola will be leaving Manchester City. This article was saying that he confirmed it to his players, just telling them that he's out and, it's not a response to how they're doing or anything like that. It's for personal reasons, doesn't want it to get into their heads, but wanted them to be prepared for it. What do you make of that?
I mean, I read the link, Football 365. I don't know. It feels a little bit like we talk about some of the transfer stuff. It feels like we're in that season where you're going to hear a lot of stories floating around. I don't know. We've heard a lot about this. We talked about this back over the holidays about him maybe leaving. So my suspicion is there's fire with that smoke. But I don't know. Some guy heard that he told the players. I don't know about that. That feels a little that I'm not. Okay. I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm not saying it's not even likely to happen. In fact, at this point, I'm starting to think maybe it is. But that to me doesn't count as confirmation. I certainly don't read anything more into that. We can confirm, however, that Mo Salah will be leaving Liverpool. That is happening. That was announced at the beginning of the break. Yeah, it's 1 year too late. But honestly, probably should have just hung him up at the end of at the end of last season. But
win the title and quit while you're on top. Yeah.
Well, that was the rumor, right? Was that his contract
Right.
was up and there was some dissension between him and the club and all of that. The curious thing will be where he goes to next. I mean, there's a lot of money and in towards him going towards Saudi Arabia. Obviously the money involved. Also, I mean, he being from Egypt, a chance to play closer to home. I can understand all of that. However, there are apparently several MLS teams who have they've made phone calls. Let's just say they're not they would like to talk. Which good for MLS. Good for MLS teams. He's still a quality player. I imagine if he came here, he would do quite fine within MLS for a year or two at least. And why not?
Right. Well, we're going to be talking about some unexpected kit developments when it comes to the FA Cup shortly. But before that, apparently there is some controversy around the kits worn in the USA-Belgium match. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, they're both white. That's not entirely true. So the US kit, we've talked about it, is kind of an off-white with red stripes simulating a waving flag.
Yeah.
The Belgian kit is kind of a white base with a lot of like pink and light blue designs. I forget what it's supposed to be representative of. But anyway, you put them next to each other and you hold them next to each other, you can kind of see the difference. You take a step back, like say you're watching the game on television,
right,
and they look kind of the same. Helped substantially by the fact that due to FIFA rules, the US shirts in the back where the number is left white. So the stripes don't go all the way around. So especially if the players are turned their back to you, you're seeing the white, obviously with the number in there, but still it looks largely white. The US wears dark shorts and white socks. Belgium was wearing white shorts and dark socks. So it was kind of a mess. It is one of those you kind of look at and go, who signed off on this? Both teams had, obviously both teams, the U.S., of course, officially, in mid-March, officially released the kits. We've been talking about them, so we have the World Cup kits are out. Belgium had just released this one as their new kit, their away kit for the World Cup. So both teams had another kit. The U.S. had the blue one with the stars. The Belgians had their home red. So there were other options. Apparently, neither of them was in the stadium, which I don't know how that works. It's kind of that feels weird to me, but I don't really know how it works.
Honestly, for my 8-year-old, his whole team is told to bring both kits to every game just in case something changes at the last minute. So apparently that should continue throughout his career, however long it may be.
Yeah. It's one of those weird things that happens now and again in international games. It's annoying. It's certainly not why the U.S. lost. They lost because Belgium's got Jeremy Doku's really good. I don't know if Arsenal fans recognize that from the Carabao Cup final, but Belgium's got some really good players. The U.S., again, friendlies. I don't want to read too deep into any of this stuff, but it was kind of some of the pictures of taken from the press box. Like it is. It still you can see the difference, but then you remember they're running around and stuff. Man, that was a big time whiff.
You're dealing with players' peripheral vision and stuff like that, where you really want it to be unambiguous too. So, yeah. Although
guys are saying it wasn't a huge issue for the player. It was awkward looking, but again, certainly not why they lost. Not ideal. Oops.
All right. As we record, this was yesterday that Arsenal fell to Southampton in the second consecutive match that we lost in a cup competition to disastrous results. This was a hard one. This was a really hard one.
Yeah, this was tough. I was all set to come on here and talk about how every time we've lost, we've ripped off like a 12 or 15 game unbeaten run right afterwards. And sort of a nice pump up following the City game. That did not happen today or yesterday. No. That was, yeah, boy.
Well, apparently Southampton has been on a 14-game unbeaten streak. They've had a really good run leading into this, which is never a good thing.
Yeah, they've been playing really well. They were at home. We've talked about this a little bit. On some level, there's a benefit Arsenal's gotten from getting, let's be lower level teams. We talked about Portsmouth and Who else did we have? Someone else, Wigan. So we've had some of those second and third tier clubs. And again, Southampton's in the Championship. Now, they were in the Premier League, last year? We know there's some capability there. But yeah, apparently had been struggling earlier in the season, fired their manager, and have since kind of righted the ship and are now knocking on the door of the playoff spot. Going away, Southampton, a place that has been difficult for us in the past. That was not necessarily there were a lot of ways that could have gone wrong, but also I'm sorry, I look at this lineup and I just think we could have done better here. This is, credit to Southampton for converting their chances, but honestly, we should have been better. It wasn't, frankly, the performance just wasn't good enough, and we got a result. I don't want to say we deserved, because deserves got nothing to do with it, but
yeah,
I can't say we deserve better.
Well, why don't we start with the lineup? So that was something I wanted to check in with you on. So how much of it was kind of preserving players, resting them for the Champions League match that's going to happen against Sporting in a couple days? It was a few days in the future from when this happened yesterday. How much of it was that? How much of it was just working with the players that we had available due to injury and whatever else was going on?
I mean, I think it's a lot of it, honestly. The big one, the two big misses, certainly even from the bench, Saka and Rice. And I think some of that was a little bit precautionary, especially, but I think also was a little bit to just giving them a rest. They giving them some time off, especially given what we're looking at. Given where we are, we're not going to get too many more opportunities, I think, to rest our top players. And so guys like Rice and Saka, this is a real opportunity for them to not play, because on some level, with this lineup, they shouldn't need all of those guys to beat a championship team. Mm-hmm. Even with all the caveats about how well they're playing and it's an away game and all of that, you frankly shouldn't need them. And so, yeah, it's and I think there's some of that too. But also, we talk about Eza's out. I mean, he is actually hurt. He would have been a real pick for this. Madueke was an interesting one because, as we said, all the noise was about him maybe probably not being available for this match, which was probably fine. I wasn't shocked to see Hincapié sit. I know I think he had picked up an injury with Ecuador over the break. I wasn't surprised to see Lewis Skelly playing this game, especially that one I think is resting Calafiori. And again, guys like Calafiori, Norgard, who knows where their head's at, given they just blew a shot at the World Cup. Especially for Calafiori, for Italy, again, kind of man, that's rough for them. But I just look at this lineup. I mean, Gabriel was playing. Ben White, we feel like should have gotten more time. Martin Odegaard was here. This was him and Kai Havertz. I think this was a good opportunity for the two of them to get some time. They needed some time to actually run and play, sort of get their legs back. And then Max Dowman, which was nice to see. He had a nice break with England. I think he was with the U18s, U19s. He was with one of their youth teams and played really well. So it was nice to see him play. But again, it does feel like with some of these times, it may be a little bit the City game too. Like, we can have good stretches, but when things start to go wrong, it feels like a bunch of guys who don't know each other quite as well as you would like. And they do start to feel a little disjointed at times, sometimes in terms of making passes. But I say that, and we're kind of being critical of the lineup here, mostly because of the results. I mean, for good chunks of this game, I think we were really good. I thought we actually played really well. Certainly, what's the line? In American football, they talk about between the 20s, so the 20-yard line to the 20-yard line, moving the ball really well. Within the 20-yard line, especially on offense, it's called the red zone. And it's the space is restricted, things like that. And so, that basically it's how well do you turn drives into points? Right. And I think this felt a lot like stretches of last season when we weren't able to convert possession into goals. I watched the highlight package before I popped on, and it was Arsenal's highlight package, so it was obviously Arsenal-centric. But we had a lot more opportunities than I remembered even, and I watched them kind of go begging, and just
we had tons. We had lots of shots. We had lots of shots on goal. I mean, like some of the most painful ones was that one late one. I feel like it was Dauman, where it was a good shot toward the far post, and the keeper made a leaping save to get that. You know, it was a good save on his part. There was one from Odegaard where he hit his plant foot on his way into goal. If that didn't happen, that probably would have gone in. We had a lot of happenstance that stopped some of them.
Right. I mean, yeah, there was a couple blocks. Obviously, the keeper made a couple saves. But honestly, some of our better chances were ones that didn't even get on goal. There was one Martinelli flashed right by the post. There's one where Odegaard mishit it and, kind of chipped it just wide. Like, it felt a lot like those games last year, but both in the sense of obviously being very wasteful in some of our opportunities, but then also getting ruthlessly punished on the other end.
Mm-hmm.
And that's honestly a big chunk of what was going on too, is that, there was a stretch there, certainly their goals we'll talk about in a moment, but even into the beginning of the second half, there was a stretch there where we were clearly rattled and clearly having trouble. They were on the front foot. They were being aggressive. They were pushing forward. And it took us a while to sort of grab control of the game back. And I think that was what the substitutions were. But before we get into all that, we should probably go back and talk about their for goal.
Yeah. So this was a pass between two Southampton players that Ben White got in position to potentially intercede in, but just whiffs on it. It goes over his head without making contact with his head. And it seemed like the worst part of that was that after he misses it, he just kind of turned around and took a look at who was, I don't remember the name of the goal scorer, but took a look at it and just kind of watched him score like as a bystander, like not putting any pressure on him at that point. I imagine anybody else, the presence of mind, you should be turning around and closing the distance, at least make it a harder shot instead of just letting him wind up and kick it in,
the error from White there, of course, is just whiffing on the header.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that's very frustrating coming on the heels of our last game and, Manchester City's first goal coming on, Kepa whiffing on a cross, right? I mean, that kind of, that's frustrating. That happens so rarely with these guys that they kind of mistime those jumps that you can almost, I get where you're coming from about wanting to see a little bit more from White on the recovery, but also like it's such an odd situation for a guy to find himself in.
Yeah.
The big error is missing the header. That's really it. Once that happens,
right.
I mean, you're kind of just everything's kind of gone haywire.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that one was frustrating in large part because we had been dominating the game to that point. I mean, yeah, they were able to get some things on the counters. They had some success getting long balls in behind us and through the midfield. But man, we were playing really well up until that point, and that really kind of just knocked us backwards in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it did. I mean, I felt at the time it was maybe 10 minutes or so of game time. And then toward the end of the second half, we were back in it. It felt like we were pressing hard again and trying to get a result leading into the halftime break. Do you feel like when we came out of halftime that we were still like in a bit of a funk, or you think that was our best form of the game, like after halftime?
I don't think it was our best form. I thought we started okay, but I guess part of the problem is at that point, once you're down, when you trail like that, especially in a manner that is so reminiscent of so many of the difficult situations you've been in before, like it is as much mental as anything else. And basically saying, oh, we're playing well almost isn't good enough. You kind of have to be a little more aggressive, a little more forward. And it just, there were stretches in there where we weren't getting a lot of the guys on the field. To me, the game really changed positively on our perspective, I think, when we made the subs.
Right.
Just looking at the guys who are coming off. Jesus, I mean, I've said a lot of nice things about him on the show. Love the guy, but man, I don't know that he has it anymore. Like, I think it's a fair question to ask right now because he was kind of invisible in this game. MLS, I don't want to turn this into what happened to him. Oh my God, we ruined him. All of this. He's still a young kid. He's still developing. He's still growing. What we got last year was great. You know, he's had more time, which means people have had more time to analyze him. You know, sophomore slumps, et cetera, et cetera. Look, he wasn't very good yesterday. He did not have a good day yesterday. Ben White had an eventful day yesterday. I thought he was good for a large part of the game right up until I almost said that out loud. Like, Ben White's been really good today. And then, of course, he goes and whiffs the header. You bring Odegaard off. I thought Odegaard was actually one of our better players. If I'm looking at positives to take out of this game, Martin Odegaard, to me, looked like he was getting back into it. And so I wasn't surprised he came off. He's still recovering from injury. This is still an FA Cup game and not as important as the league or the Champions League. So, you know, Odegaard's. Yeah, I think that was a planned 60 minutes. I think he was set to go 60 minutes. Sure. And that was going to, regardless of the game state. But to me, Madueke was willing to be more aggressive pushing forward. We know Calafiori can be more aggressive pushing forward. Gyökeres is good, is able to pull defenders around and push forward. I thought that was really kind of what made us a little more dangerous, was getting those guys in.
Right.
And sure enough, within 10 minutes, we were level.
Yeah. Yeah, that was some nice play that led to that. The backward cross from Kai Havertz to Victor Gyökeres. That was a nice moment.
Yeah, I meant to look at it on the highlight. I didn't see it. The pass that slips in Havertz.
Yeah,
gorgeous stuff. Gets in. He's all alone. I
think it was Gabriel. Yeah,
Gabriel. Okay.
Yeah. I'm looking at it.
Great pass to slip him in, and then he goes in, and there you kind of. I mean, yeah, the instinct there is to maybe take a shot, but he's able to cross it back. Gyökeres makes the run, finishes with authority. The guy's feeling. I think he scored 4 goals for Sweden over the international break. Like, he's been playing well.
Yeah.
I think he's a guy, hopefully, who can kind of kick on as we go along. It's 1-1. It was good to see. And from there, I think we really were largely on the front foot once again. I wouldn't say camped out on their end to score, but we were definitely, I think, putting most of the pressure on them, but a lot of poor finishing and then some giveaways, and then ultimately one that, we were out of sorts defensively and they made us pay.
Yeah. I was crushed by that second goal of theirs. That was a bad moment.
Yeah, I don't know. I watched the replay and I just can't quite figure out what's going on, other than they managed to overload us and outnumber us in the box, and the ball gets to the open man. And, I credit to him. There's a little bit of me that feels like Kepa maybe could have done a little better on that shot. But overall, again, that's on the defense for letting guys get behind them. That's on the defense for giving up those kind of, even giving up that kind of opportunity. And, it can't happen. That's really it. That just sort of thing just can't happen. And yet it did. And that's very frustrating. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's painful to talk about, but yeah, it was, and when we scored our leveling goal, a big part of me was like, okay, good. We did this early enough in the second half. We have time to come back and not have it go to penalties. But then when they scored that one with only 5 minutes left in regulation time in the second half, it was like, oh no.
I knew there'd be a fair amount of stoppage time.
Yeah. It was late enough though, where it was just, we hadn't been materializing those chances. That was the tough thing. Like, I was hoping the relentless pressure, if we were lucky, could result in one more goal. And yeah, it was.
I mean, there's an argument to be made that the nightmare scenario for this game would have been extra time.
Yeah.
Because if we're level after 90 minutes, then we're playing an extra half hour. And that's, you look at our bench, the bench, we didn't have, once we put on Gyökeres, we didn't really, and Madueke, we didn't really have any offensive options there.
Yeah. So, and we only had 2 subs to make anyway, so it's not like you can just bring on more fresh legs too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was a fresh legs problem. I think it was because we had two subs. Actually, we used them both. Zubimendi came on for Havertz, which I think it was a little bit more about Havertz going 90 minutes and not going 90 minutes than Zubimendi. But also Gabriel came off, which walked off under his own power. I haven't heard anything post-game, but we know he's been dealing with a little something that's a little worrisome. Obviously, with the run in, obviously with what we're looking ahead, who knows? But obviously, it's not ideal. Yeah, we were out of subs at that point. I will say, again, we ended up having about 12 minutes left, which is a lot of time. And I thought we used the time fairly well, minus the end product, which, again, totally lacking. But, I mean, Madueke, I saw the good and bad of Madueke yesterday. I saw the guy who was willing to run at players and make things happen. I also saw the guy who was quite capable of dribbling the ball off his feet out the back for a goal kick. Martinelli too. Martinelli's a guy who can create so many opportunities, and then that final ball just kind of just whiffs on it,
While we're talking about Martinelli, what was with that yellow card he picked up? Did you see that? He pushed the referee?
Yeah, so I didn't want to talk about it because it sounds like sour grapes. I didn't think the referee was... Well, I should be careful with this. The referee had an interesting game yesterday. I will say, I thought Southampton went down real easy. There was a play early in the game where the guy goes down in the box, and they were, of course, begging for a penalty. I'm sorry, that's a joke.
No.
It would have been a joke. And the referee very rightly, gave him the wave on. There were a lot of things he let go. A lot of times felt like we were getting pulled back, which at least I figured, give us the courtesy of calling advantage, just act like you would call something. It was a little frustrating. Obviously, some of their frustration is going on. But the referee is trying to hold the ball to, I don't know, address somebody or point or something. And Martinelli wants to try to restart quickly and so kind of shoves the ref out of the way. You can't do that. I understand. I get it. And on some level, the referee's kind of like, what are you doing, man? We don't need to do this. Let's go. But at the same time, you can't do that. He has to keep his cool there. And look at that. When was that? I mean, that was where we're looking at. Okay, it's 90 plus 94.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting there, but you're getting the free kick. You're getting the opportunity. And just... Yeah, to me, that was just a poor decision from Martinelli, born out of frustration.
Do you think there's a chance it was mistaken identity? He thought he was on Southampton, just pushing at someone who he didn't realize at the time was a referee? It just seems so bonkers for him to do that. I mean,
if he made that excuse, no one would believe him. I think it's kind of the way I just have a hard time with I'm not sure I'd buy that if he came out and said it. Again, I don't think this needs to be a referendum on Martinelli as an adult or anything. No. It was a bad decision in a bad time. Not that there's a good time to pick up a yellow card for pushing the ref around. You cannot do that.
One other silly stoppage time thing. What on earth were they thinking with their 7th minute of a minimum 6-minute stoppage time substitution at Southampton?
Time wasting. That's time wasting. That was as 100% time wasting. And they say they calculated. And again, they gave us 6. They said 6 minutes. They gave us 7 and a half. You're frustrated because how much extra time do you want? As much as we need to score. But honestly, that was a time wasting maneuver. And credit to Southampton. That's they did what they had to do. And they created the opportunities. They had a couple others. They had that one that cracked off the crossbar.
Yes,
Southampton did not sit 10 in the box, and they broke on us effectively. They played effectively. They did what they wanted to do in this game, and obviously scoring earlier kind of puts us behind the 8 ball and changes the dynamic in a lot of ways. But yeah, it was that was pure time wasting. And yeah, they did some things that were annoying, but what annoyed me was losing 2-1. That's what's annoying.
Right.
Everything that's annoying about this game stems from the fact that we lost. If we had won, I wouldn't care, but we didn't.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So some silly things to talk about. So, I mean, frivolous things. So for one thing, we were playing in their stadium, and yet they were wearing a change kit, and we were wearing our home kit. What was the deal there?
So, I was interested because I kind of assumed we'd be wearing the blue kits going in. Southampton wears red and white stripes, obviously, or red kits, or white kits. They're out. We wear the blue. But all of Arsenal's pregame graphics were all done in the red and white, which I thought was interesting. And so I looked it up. This is apparently the 50th anniversary of them winning the FA Cup, which they won wearing yellow kits, which as an Arsenal fan, I can respect a team that wears yellow kits to Wembley to win the cup. That's kind of been our thing, actually, historically. So, I get it. But because they were wearing these special anniversary kits, which I thought looked nice, it did look very Arsenalesque. Because of that, Arsenal wore red and white because why not? Which was interesting to me. Also led to all the yellow balloons being on the field. I don't think that was why the yellow balloons were on the field, but that's why they had yellow balloons all around.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was super annoying the whole time. And at first, it was just the one. Odegaard was going to take a corner kick, and like he and someone else like kind of popped it and tossed off to the side or something. But it was all game long. Those balloons were bouncing around. It had to be annoying for the players.
I wonder if it was a little windy there too. It didn't look super windy, but I wonder. I mean, they're balloons, right? You don't take much to get caught up in the wind and get tossed around. Certainly get out of some kid's hand and all of a sudden wind up on the. As you see, St. Mary's is not a big stadium, so it's not like there's a huge distance between the stands and the field. Right. So it wouldn't take much for a couple of them to wind up on the field. But yeah, they were kind of there all game, which it was an interesting atmosphere. Again, had we won, I'd find it charming. We lost. I find it very annoying.
One thing I wanted to ask you about, I noticed in the first half in particular, I think they had kind of given up on this tactic by the second half, but we had a whole bunch of corner kicks in the first half, just like relentless. There was one run of play where we had like 3 or 4 back to back. It was just tons of corner kicks. All but one that I recall in the first half were all short corners. Do you know why we would have done it that way? Is it just keeping them on their toes, assuming that they had prepared for our typical short corners and keep them guessing? Like, what was the thought there, do you think?
I think there's probably a couple of things going on, and this is all speculative. One is, I hate to say this as disrespectful to Southampton, but I think the sense was we didn't need the corners to beat Southampton. So maybe this is an opportunity to try some different things. I mean, we've been running, we haven't been running the corners the same way all season. And so obviously, as they evolve and change, there's also an element of let's try a few things against Southampton so that Newcastle and City and everyone else who's watching this will have to now prepare for these different things we're doing, even if so it adds a little bit to that. I think some of it, too, might have been our 2 regular corner takers, right? Saka and Rice were out. And you have Odegaard, who certainly can whip a good ball into the box, but you're missing your 2 key guys, and I wonder if they kind of say, okay, well, this is an opportunity maybe to try some different things that we wouldn't have otherwise done. So to me, there were a lot of those things going on. But then as you notice, right, we move to the second half, and we start throwing balls in the box again.
Yeah.
We did create, I was going to say, not to be critical of those, because we did create a couple of chances on some of those short corners.
Yeah.
So I do think there was a little bit of much like with the lineup, this is an opportunity to try some things that we wouldn't otherwise, that we wouldn't necessarily want to try in the league. Corners are important to our game, enough to our game that you could almost say, maybe if we tried a few more of the normal ones, we'd have won. But I don't think you can say that. Especially
before Gabriel got taken off.
Yeah.
We talked about Kepa a little bit as far as the second goal we conceded. What were your thoughts on him this match? And I guess at this point, we're not very likely to see him in more than another match or two this season. So maybe on him as a whole as our cup keeper this season.
Yeah. I mean, overall, like, you have to also include in his ledger, of course, winning the shootout against Brighton in the quarterfinals there for the Carabao Cup. I mean, he's a backup keeper. And I think as a backup keeper, he was fine. We talked about this last time. I understand why he gets the start in the Carabao Cup final. It would not have surprised me had we gone to the semis of the FA Cup if he would have gotten a start there. Final, I think, probably depends on how a couple other things are playing out between the league and the Champions League. But it didn't surprise me necessarily that he got the start today, because this is kind of what he's for, right? This is why you have a guy like Kepa. This is why you have backup keepers, is to play games like this. And a cup tie against a second-tier team. We shouldn't need Raya to win this. And I don't think it's fair. I know he obviously has the big gaffe that leads to City's opening goal. I don't know that it's entirely fair to blame his presence on the poor result. It certainly wasn't his fault that we couldn't finish in either game. But I do think one of the things you see, and this came out especially in the aftermath of the City game, Kepa is not nearly as good a passer as Raya is. And we saw a number of times where he'd hoof the ball upfield. Like, Raya can place the ball. He can send it to people. Kepa can't quite as well. And that led to some giveaways, or a couple times he's trying to clear away and winds up just booting the ball out of bounds, which is not great. That's a turnover. And there are times as well, like, Raya's really his great strength, of course, is his command in the box, right? How many times have we seen him, on some of these plays, go up and grab a ball in the box and just snuff out any opportunities, right? That's Arteta, that we've talked about that line before, right? He stops things from happening.
Yeah.
And Kepa doesn't do that as well. Obviously, the whiffing on the first City goal is kind of the most glaring example of that. But he had another one where he kind of awkwardly palms it away while falling back, and it's just not good enough. It sets up another corner, and so.
I even noticed one time, I think it was sometime in the first half, where he was way outside the 18-yard box and probably shouldn't have still been at that point, but the ball's at his feet and he knows he needs to do something. So he attempts to awkwardly clear it and just chips it basically straight up in the air and hard enough that it gives him time to get back to the line to save the shot that they shouldn't have been able to get off in the first place.
Right. I mean, he's a backup keeper, in terms of, are we going to see him again? There's a scenario where we're headed to the Champions League final and have already wrapped up the league, such that maybe that final game he plays, the final Premier League game away to Palace, because who cares? We're resting our regulars to go, to get ready for Budapest while... he can run the backups out, because we've already won the league. But that's one possible scenario. I mean, if that's a game we need to win the league, then no, Raya's playing. Champions League, as long as we're in Raya's the Champions League keeper. I don't see any games really left where I would, go and say, pull up a schedule real quick. I mean, just quickly right now, we have in the league Bournemouth away to City, Newcastle at home, Fulham at home, at West Ham, home against Burnley, at Crystal Palace. The only one of those I say maybe would be Burnley at home, but it's the final home game, so I suspect Raya would start. And ideally, of course, there's a little bit of a post-game ceremony, hopefully. But other than that, if you're at Kepa, I think this might be it. And again, he's a backup keeper. I don't want to say they're totally replaceable, but they're here to do a very particular job, and it wouldn't surprise me if he wants to go do that job on a more regular basis somewhere else next year. And thanks for the memories. I mean, if we walk away with the trophy, this season, he'll always have been a part of that. And that sounds critical, obviously, given the way the last two games have gone. But that's how it goes with backup goalies. That's just how it is. But again, what have I learned about Kepa? Well, I've learned Raya's better. That's what I've learned about Kepa.
All right, so for this week, the only match was the FA Cup quarterfinal. That usually makes this a little bit easier when it's a single match for a single player of the week. But who is your pick?
Honestly, there's really only two options for this. I do want to give a shout out to Martin Odegaard, who I thought was really good. Got his 60 minutes in. Hopefully, that stands us in good stead down the stretch in the league and the Champions League. But the best player the best player we had for the game was Max Dowman.
Sure.
Which again is exciting. He was direct. He was forward. He drove. He tried to make things happen. Got fouled a couple of times in critical areas, which set up some opportunities.
Sure. Which he does whenever he's on the pitch. It seems that's one of his skills.
I mean, child abuse, man. Can't. To me, he was the best player on the field, which on the one hand is kind of exciting to have a player of that age and that caliber and that ability is awesome. There's also a part of me that goes, why is our best player a 16-year-old? Why is a child the best player we have? That's not for a team in Arsenal's position. We're talking about winning all the things. That's not great. Yeah, but to me, it's Max Dowman.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. Defending him a little bit, what I would say is it's kind of the same reason that we hit that position with Miles Lewis-Skelly and Ethan Nwaneri last season. It's like, we're thankful to have them because we unfortunately do need them, just given the depth issues with the number of injuries that we have. Yeah. And I'm glad he's there to step up. I mean, what I'll say for him is he made me not really miss Saka so much. Like, I wasn't thinking when he was out there, like, I wish we had a more senior player in the right wing right now. Like, he was definitely up to the task.
Yeah, and I mean, some of that too, I think, is a little bit of Saka has had some injury issues. He's also had some form issues. We keep sort of waiting for him to turn it on, and it kind of hasn't quite happened, which is disappointing. But again, there is, let's not be super negative about this. He is a really exciting player.
Definitely.
Even if he, isn't legally allowed to be in the locker room with his teammates when they change.
Yeah. The other player who I wanted to mention, so Dowman, definitely unanimous between us this week. I fully support that. It was pretty obvious. But who I also did notice and wanted to give a shout out to was Christian Norgard. Actually acquitted himself pretty well. He had a few nice moments where I noticed him just like stretching out a leg, making an interception that was useful in the moment. Just some good things from him that I hadn't really noticed so much before. So.
Well, that's because we haven't really noticed much of anything Christian Norgard's done because he hasn't played that much this year. I thought he was okay. You could definitely see some of his limitations vis-a-vis a Zubimendi or a Rice. I mean, there were a few times they were able to transition the ball through the midfield, partly because Norgard's recovery speed isn't that of Declan Rice or Zubimendi. He's going to be an interesting one for me if we look back on the season, especially if we face the nightmare scenario. That's what I almost look back at points ago. Are there moments where he could have played just a little bit more or a little bit at all? Maybe gotten a few extra minutes on the bench for Rice and Zubimendi just as it doesn't feel like we're running them ragged, running them down to the end. And again, some of this is injury related. Obviously Mikel Merino is a huge loss in the midfield as well. Yeah, Havertz and Eze, of course, now, Havertz missing most of the season, Eze being out. So we are feeling very thin in the midfield like that. But I thought Norgard had some decent moments there as well. I don't think that's entirely unfair.
All right, here we're saving room for dessert this week.
Yes, folks, you are looking live at Dove getting his first glimpse of the leaked version of next year's home kit. We've done a lot of World Cup kits, but now we're going. Footy Headlines has a version of the home kit to take a look at. So,
well, let's give a moment of appreciation for Footy Headlines. Where would we be in our dessert section if it weren't for Footy Headlines? They have incredible sources. They're like the place where you go with this stuff. Apparently, I don't know.
Oh yeah, and they get a lot of stuff that's kind of sketchy and weird and wrong. But when it comes to football kits, they've clearly got some good info. which it's nice and it generates good conversation. The clubs love this, of course, because they like to generate the buzz about things.
Right.
But anyway, the home kit for next season. What do you think?
Let's feed that. All right, I'm going to click on the link now. It's coming up. Oh, that's interesting. So, still almost monochromatic like this season's home jersey. We've got two tones of red going on, which I don't remember seeing in the kits that I've seen for Arsenal before. So we've got a little bit of a partial crew collar that kind of comes to an end. I don't know what you call it. Is that a shawl collar? I don't know what they call that style of collar.
You're beyond me. It does have an interesting sort of lightning bolt style design on it.
Yeah, the lightning bolts surrounding the collar. Then you've got the chunky Adidas stripes,
which we've seen on the World Cup kits.
Right, exactly. The middle one is more like the traditional color that you'd expect that the front of a jersey is, and then the back and front shoulder stripes are darker, which is the same color as the lightning bolt alternating pattern on the collar. Interesting. I don't hate it. I don't know.
Yeah, they also went monochromatic on the crest, so it's just red and white.
Right. It's another thing that really makes it look very similar to this season's. Obviously, there's no indication of any sublimated pattern. It's just a solid red. But yeah, the crest is the monochromatic, just white, just like this season. It's the Adidas, is the three stripes Adidas logo with no name underneath it. Oh, and that same collar is also repeated on the hem of the sleeves.
Right. So yeah,
interesting.
And then, of course, also we should point out on the sleeve sponsor, we are no longer will be visiting Rwanda. Our new sleeve sponsor is Deal. I don't know what that is, but it says Deal all in lowercase letters with a period at the end. So
yeah, I was seeing that. I didn't know if that was almost like a placeholder. So that is part of the rumor, is that will be the new sleeve sponsor.
I believe that. Well, I don't remember official about the sponsor. I believe it was official they were losing. Or they were dropping Visit Rwanda. We have done some two-tone darker reds in the past. The most recent comparison, which is somewhere later in the article, is the kit from the 2021 season, which had kind of these red arrows kind of going back and forth across it, which was an interesting one.
That's come up when we've been doing our bios, as I'm digging into some of the older appearances of like Gabriel Jesus and Martinelli and Ben White, some of the guys who've been with the club for 4 or 5 years. I've seen that one coming up. Yeah.
And then just the last note that I found interesting, the crest is monochrome. So if you're looking at this as comparison, imagine instead of blue, it's red, and instead of yellow, it's white. And that's right. The crest we're looking at there.
For our viewers, I'll have a picture up there, or multiple pictures to show everyone what it looks like. But yeah, it's basically what we have this season. This season, it's the same thing on our home kit. I can't say I won't buy it. Nothing about this greatly offends me. Of course, it'll also be different seeing it on a person instead of just on a hanger or sitting on a table. What do you think overall?
I mean, I think it looks fine. It's an Arsenal shirt. It's red with white sleeves. Adidas has been very good to us. Puma was getting a little crazy on some of the piping and some of the things they were doing with the sleeves. Nike, too, towards the end, had some weird choices with that. So, I mean, it's red with white sleeves. I'm pretty easy to please, especially on the home kits. So, yeah. Probably not going to buy it, because if I'm spending money on kits this year, it's going to be for World Cup stuff. But it does look nice, and as always, it'll definitely look better on the players than it does on us. And it'll definitely look a lot better if they're wearing it while they walk around with the trophy. So
right. What is coming up for Arsenal this week?
So we're back at it. We said there were two competitions we really wanted to win. It wasn't either of the cups. It was the Champions League and the Premier League. Guess what? That's all we've got left. First off, Tuesday, the first leg of the Champions League quarterfinal, away to Sporting CP, Sporting Club of Portugal, not Sporting Lisbon. They don't like that. But we head to Lisbon. That'll be on Paramount Plus on Tuesday. So let's see if we can get a good performance there against a dangerous veteran European side in the Portuguese side. And then Saturday, early morning, against Bournemouth at home, a team that's always been a little tricky for us. I think we drew both those games last year, but a result we frankly need. We are 9 points up on City. Let's keep it that way. The more we keep the pressure on them, because this is, by the way, our last Premier League game. Looking at the calendar, yes, this will be our last Premier League game before we head up to the Etihad at the following week. So let's put them under as much pressure as we can. Let's see if we can make that game meaningless, or more meaningless than they would prefer.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us at Gooner U. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can also listen to the podcast version of our show on Apple, Spotify, and some other places. If you're only listening, try watching us on YouTube with the link in the show notes. Your homework for today is to subscribe to us on YouTube and wherever else you see or hear us. We record the show using Zencastr. If you'd like to try it out, you can support Gooner U by signing up using the link in the description, which also has links to everything we talked about and our socials. Again, my name is Dove, and you can find me on Twitter at Dove Frankel. With me, as always, is Keith, and you can find him in a pub watching Arsenal matches.
2 months to go, Gooners. Hold on to your butts.